The thing about the Oscars is they do reflect society. That's why we pay so much attention, partly. And things are always changing in our industry, like streaming. It just changed the whole industry. This happens so often. So they have to come up with new categories for the awards. The Golden Globes came up with a new one this year. They're basically a picture people liked. They had, they had become such self-congratulating, virtue-signaling bores that they had to go, oh yeah, let's make a category for that. People actually paid to see something great. One more thing needs to be said. Comedians have been under attack for quite some time, and I need to stick up for my tribe. This war on jokes must end.
Maher took direct aim at the people running the Oscars, blasting them for caving to woke ideology. In his view, the once glamorous show has been reduced to a platform for political grandstanding and cheap, crowd-pleasing moments. His takedown was sharp, cutting, and held nothing back.
Democrats, if you ever want to win an election again, the absolute most important first step is stop doing this.
We gather in celebration of the Oscars on the ancestral lands of the Tongva, Tataviam, and Chumash peoples, the traditional caretakers of this water and land.
Yeah, I don't know if we're still saying cringe. But if we are, that's this. I've said it before, I'll say it again. Either give the land back or shut the
Celebrity commentary has lately devolved into a chaotic race, with famous faces tripping over each other to deliver the wildest, most attention-grabbing political takes imaginable. Whatever is most likely to blow up online takes center stage. Nuanced conversation is essentially dead. What drives the machine now is clout, applause, and the dopamine hit of viral validation. In the rush to appear bold or principled, many of them never stop to question what their words actually mean, or whether their argument even holds up. Bill Maher, clearly fed up with the whole spectacle, is now calling out what he sees as blatant hypocrisy. The way he sees it, these entertainers have mastered the performance of caring, while doing little of actual substance. He urged them to drop the soaring speeches and the hollow ritual of virtue signaling. If the causes they constantly champion truly mean something to them, he argues, they should step away from the spotlight and take real, meaningful action. Because slogans and stage moments are not activism.
I would like to commemorate the moment 50 years ago that transformed the Oscar telecast into what it is today. A 4-hour lecture on how bad most people have it by the people who have it the best. But let's talk about the progress part, because people today don't seem to have a realistic view of how progress works. For example, do you know who Time Magazine's Man of the Year was in that year of 1973? Me neither, because who cares? The point is Time Magazine was still calling their award the Man of the Year. Time Magazine, another pillar of liberal enlightenment like the Oscars, but it only changed the name to Person of the Year in 1999.
Maher might actually be onto something. More often than not, the loudest complaints about America tend to come from people already living at levels of privilege most people can barely fathom. These are individuals with massive platforms, sprawling multi-million-dollar estates, and career opportunities that the average person could only dream of. Yet they routinely describe the country as though it's in a state of total freefall, as if everything is beyond saving. The contradiction is hard to miss. The very system they denounce with such passion is also the one that lifted them to extraordinary wealth and influence. America is far from perfect. No, country is. But its progress over time is difficult to argue against. That same progress is what enabled so many of these celebrities to build remarkable careers, accumulate staggering fortunes, and live with a level of comfort and opportunity few in the world will ever know. Maher's point cuts through the noise with a straightforward challenge. Before declaring the nation beyond repair, maybe take a moment to acknowledge the freedoms and opportunities that made your success possible in the first place.
They had become such self-congratulating, virtue-signaling bores that they had to go, oh yeah, let's make a category for that. People actually paid to see something great. So there's new Oscar categories. Would you like to hear the Oscar I knew you would want to hear them. This was needed. Best editing of a film that's still an hour too long.
There was a time when Oscar night felt like a genuine celebration, an industry pausing to honor the best of itself. Maher's argument is that somewhere along the way, the Academy swapped that mission for something far less interesting. A desperate, exhausting audition for the approval of people who probably weren't watching anyway. The obsession with restructuring, renaming, and retrofitting every corner of the ceremony reads less like progress and more like an organization in full panic mode, terrified of saying the wrong thing. Meanwhile, the actual filmmakers, the writers grinding through rewrites, the directors gambling their careers on a vision, the actors disappearing into roles, get shoved to the back row while the ceremony lectures the audience. And the audience? They noticed. They left. The ratings tell a story the Academy keeps refusing to read. Maher's broader point carries a sharp irony. The relentless pursuit of inclusivity somehow produced a show that fewer and fewer people feel included in. An award ceremony that alienates its own viewers in the name of representation might be the most Hollywood outcome imaginable. The industry famous for selling escapism managed to turn its biggest night into homework.
So there's Oscar categories. Would you like to hear the Oscar I knew you would. I knew you would want to hear them. This was needed. Best editing of a film that's still an hour too long.
Maher isn't actually proposing new Oscar categories. That's the whole joke. The bit is straight up satire, a comedic wrecking ball aimed at Hollywood's growing appetite for awards that feel less like recognition and more like participation trophies dressed in designer gowns. The genius of the approach is its simplicity. Rather than delivering a straightforward lecture, he just follows the Academy's own logic to its natural, absurd conclusion. If an organization keeps manufacturing categories engineered to generate goodwill rather than celebrate genuine craft, where exactly does it stop? Maher gleefully answers that question by cranking the dial to 11. His underlying frustration is real, though. Cinema is a brutally difficult art form. Years of labor, creative risk, and technical precision compressed into something an audience experiences in 2 hours. Reducing that legacy to a scoreboard of symbolic gestures feels, to Maher, like a quiet insult to everyone who actually makes the work. So he takes the mockery further. If the mission is now to manufacture viral moments and soothe Twitter's perpetually wounded sensibilities, then forget Best Picture. Hand out the golden statue for Most Impassioned, Acceptance Speech Rant, or Best Performative Outrage in a Political Monologue. At some point, the joke stops being funny because it stops being entirely fictional.
Have been under attack for quite some time, and I need to stick up for my tribe. This war on jokes must end. So tonight, let's Zapruder film this thing once and for all and explain jokes to idiots.
Maher then pivots to a target he's been circling for years. The outrage machine that has quietly declared open season on comedians. In his mind, stand-up comedy was never supposed to be comfortable. It was always the place where the unspeakable got spoken, where sacred cows got dragged into the light, and where the audience laughed precisely because someone finally said the thing everyone was already thinking. That version of comedy is fighting for survival. The formula now is grimly predictable. A comedian lands a joke that grazes the wrong topic, and within hours, the clip is everywhere, stripped of context, weaponized, and attached to a petition. The pylon arrives before the laughter even fades. What was meant to provoke a chuckle instead triggers a coordinated campaign to torch a career. Maher's argument goes deeper than just defending jokes. He sees the chilling effect as the real damage. Performers mentally rehearsing their own cancellation before stepping on stage, editing themselves into bland, safe, toothless versions of what they could have been. Comedy that refuses to offend anyone eventually says nothing worth hearing. The irony he finds most maddening: the loudest champions of speaking truth to power seem remarkably comfortable silencing the one art form historically built to do exactly that. Turns out, free expression is enormously popular, right up until someone says something you don't like.
The Oscars, Chris Rock came out to present a boring award and first did what he is supposed to do, get some laughs doing what we comics call crowd work. Denzel and Javier Bardem each got spritzed. And then Chris made what in the business is known as a some is like some other joke. He said to Jada Smith, "Jada can't wait for G.I. Jane 2, recalling the late 90s movie starring Demi Moore. That's it. That's the joke. You remind me of some other beautiful, buzz-cutted movie star. It wasn't an alopecia joke any more than the one about the chicken crossing the road is about bird flu."
Maher then lands on the moment that crystallized everything, the slap heard around the world. When Will Smith walked across that stage and cracked Chris Rock across the face on live television, Maher saw something far more significant than a celebrity losing his temper. He saw a symbol. Rock was doing what hosts and comedians have done at award shows since practically the invention of award shows, scanning the front row and finding something worth teasing. It's a tradition as old as Hollywood itself. Presidents get roasted. Athletes get skewered. Nobody sitting in those seats is supposed to be off limits. That's the unwritten contract of the room. The joke about Jada Pinkett Smith's alopecia wasn't some calculated act of cruelty. By the standards of what comedians routinely get away with, it barely registered as edgy. Yet it ended with a man getting physically assaulted on one of the most watched stages on the planet. What rattles Maher isn't the slap itself. It's what the slap revealed. A culture so primed for offense, so convinced that discomfort equals harm, that a throwaway joke can justify a physical confrontation in front of a global audience. The frightening part isn't that it happened. The frightening part is how many people in that room sat in stunned silence instead of treating it as the unambiguous line crossing it was.
Not an insult, although insult humor is also a staple of comedy. And in fact, an example of insulting someone's looks was on display that night when Regina Hall said, "We've been dealing with COVID for 2 years. It's been really hard on people." And Amy Schumer said, "Yeah, just look at Timothée Chalamet," and they cut to J.K. Simmons, who made a face a lot like the one Jada would make later on.
Maher's message to celebrities is simple, almost painfully so. Relax. You are not fragile. A joke at your expense is not a crisis. There's something quietly beautiful about comedy's ability to close the distance between a person watching from their couch and someone living in a mansion behind a gate. For a few seconds, a well-landed joke strips away the fame, the entourage, and the carefully managed public image. And what's left is just a human being, with the same weird haircut, strange habits, and questionable life choices as everyone else. The audience laughs not out of cruelty, but out of recognition. That's the connection. That's always been the point. Maher's frustration is that somewhere along the way, fame started coming packaged with an invisible force field, an unspoken rule that celebrities deserve immunity from the same gentle ridicule that gets aimed at everyone else. But that's not how any of this is supposed to work. The bigger the platform, the more scrutiny comes with it. That trade-off is as old as public life itself. A joke isn't a verdict. It isn't a personal indictment or a coordinated takedown. It's a comedian doing their job, finding the funny in the human condition, and inviting everyone in the room to laugh together for a moment. The ability to absorb that with grace isn't weakness. If anything, it's the one thing that makes a celebrity genuinely likable.
And importantly, Chris's joke was received as funny, as evidenced by the audience and Will Smith laughing. And this is the moment where we got to see a live-action, real-time encapsulation of how cancel culture works. Look at what happens next. Jada shoots her husband a look. Let's slow the tape down to capture this moment. There. Back and to the left. Back and to the left.
Maher has watched this movie enough times to know exactly how it ends before it even starts. A joke lands. The room laughs. The person it was aimed at laughs. The comedian moves on. For everyone actually present, it's already a distant memory by the next commercial break. Normal human interaction, start to finish. Then the clip hits the internet. Suddenly, an entirely different audience, one that wasn't there, didn't hear the setup, and couldn't feel the energy of the room, appoints itself judge and jury. The context evaporates. The laughter disappears from the story. What remains is a decontextualized few seconds, perfectly engineered for maximum indignation, ready to be passed around like evidence at a trial. But here's the part Maher finds most bizarre, and almost darkly comedic in its own right. The actual person involved often has to be told they were victimized. Strangers on the internet, thousands of miles away, nursing their outrage over someone else's experience, begin instructing the subject on exactly how wounded they should feel. The pressure builds until a shrug becomes impossible, and a public statement of hurt becomes almost mandatory. That's the engine. Not genuine offense, manufactured offense, assembled from the outside in, running entirely on the fuel of people who needed something to be angry about that afternoon. Common sense and humor don't survive the algorithm.
Before this moment, Will is laughing because he hasn't yet found out that his original genuine reaction is wrong and that he should conform to a different view. And he's the one who's being manly? I've seen the same syndrome happen in comedy clubs. Woke hecklers who literally have to wait for the laughter to die down before they yell, "That's not funny!"
Strip away all the noise, and Maher's point is almost embarrassingly straightforward. We forgot how to have fun, and the things we built to entertain us are paying the price. Hollywood spent decades being dangerous, unpredictable, and genuinely alive. Award shows had electricity. Comedians had teeth. Audiences showed up not knowing what they were going to get. That uncertainty wasn't a flaw, it was the whole attraction. Something got lost when every institution started running every decision through the filter of how it might play to the angriest corner of the internet. What replaced it is a kind of cultural bubble wrap, everything padded, softened, and pre-approved. Comedians performing triage on their own material before anyone else hears it. Ceremonies engineered to offend nobody, which somehow manages to bore everybody. Creativity suffocating quietly under the weight of perpetual risk assessment. Maher's closing argument isn't really about politics or Hollywood or even comedy specifically. It's about something simpler, the human need to laugh, including at ourselves. That ability to find humor in our own flaws and contradictions is one of the few things that actually connects people across every divide imaginable. The moment a culture loses that, it doesn't become more respectful or more compassionate. It just becomes smaller, tighter, afraid of its own shadow. And nothing, not a single joke ever told, is worth that trade.